So, David, can you start by describing the footage that the Maysles shot and, what had been out in the world before and what you were seeing for the first time?
A fair amount of it had been in What's Happening, which is the Maysles brothers edited it in, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks. It showed on, I mean, this is how much the world has changed in a way. It showed on CBS, but it was considered so radical that Carol Burnett did these interstitials kind of explaining what they were seeing. Um, it's very strange, and one copy of it remained at like the Academy Film Archive, so we got to watch it. Um, and then Al Maysles, along with I think it was Susan Frumke and a team of editors, um, revisited it in 1991, and they added a little bit more footage. Um, this has over 20 minutes of new footage from the Maysles material. And we're kind of in a world now where there's so many collectors, there's so many kind of things that have thought to be lost are kind of turning up again. And so there's quite a lot of stuff from that. And then was the performance in Washington, which was uh, filmed at the time. I mean, the Maysles shot one or two songs, but it was filmed on 2-inch video. And the Maysles had never, in any of their versions, had never really incorporated those performances, nor did they incorporate the Ed Sullivan Show. And we're interested in the music as much as we're interested in anything else about the Beatles.
Now, we just saw some of that footage. If anyone has ever seen any of What's Happening before, it never looked that good before. I mean, can you talk about the restoration process on this?
Sure. I mean, when I started working, it was sort of the end of the period of 16 millimeter. And I remember 16 millimeter, it scratched very quickly. It was, it was dirty very quickly. And it was hard to get a good print, and, I like to say it's as if Peter Jackson's company, Park Road, did a full picture restoration. And it's like they put a magic wand over it. They had the original negative, and they had everything. They had work prints, and they had, inner negatives, inner positives, and they transferred everything. And then they pieced it, this edit room that had essentially been closed in 1965. They pieced it all back together again. So when I came onto the project, it was all organized very kind of neatly with a bow in the Avid. And it was extraordinary.
I mean, thinking about the historical context of it, one thing that had never been clear to me until watching the film is that the Beatles' arrival happens just 2 months before John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And I mean, I wonder if you can reflect on what that meant for this historical moment.
Well, the part of the goal of the film was to document what that world was like in 1964. That there's been, it was a very different world. And, it's not actually in the film. David Lynch told a story where his girlfriend locked herself in her room for 3 days after the assassination because she was so upset she couldn't leave her room. And it was a real moment of trauma. And remember, this is basically in the Christmas season. It's November, December, January, and it was a very traumatic event. Was there two parts to the question? I forget.
No, I mean, I think you answered what that historical context was. I mean, you talked about how new things have turned up. This is a very combed over history. And so what were the things that came to light for you that that stood out to you?
I mean, there were a lot of different things. A lot of it came up during the research. Like I read this essay by Sigrid Nunez, who was not able to be in the film, but she talked about how she grew up in the Bronx. She was 14-year-old when the Beatles came to New York, and she uh, she talked about how they saw something, she and her peers, that nobody else saw. And that in a way it was discounted because they were young women. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And, we got Jane Tompkins, Vicky Bernacosta. We got people, well, young girls who had gone to the Plaza Hotel, and Jamie Bernstein, um, to talk about, who were articulate about what that experience had been like, why it was important to them, why it was life-changing for them, along with other people. But I would also say, I mean, part of the context, it was so scandalous how long their hair was, and yet you can see their ears. Their hair is not long at all, and for me also, there's a piece by Betty Friedan a clip of Betty Friedan on a TV show from maybe 1965, 1966. And she's talking about what long hair meant. That these people are saying, you don't have to be Hemingway, you don't have to kill bears, you don't have to go to Vietnam and kill people to be a man. That was very interesting to me, how the Beatles represented a different kind of masculinity, and that both women and men related to them differently. So, but again, in a way, these are all kind of words and concepts, but in a way, it came down to the music, the joy in the music.
When you spend time with this 11 hours of footage that Albert Maysles shot, what strikes you about his eye and what he's doing with the camera?
How did he know what was going to happen before it happened? I mean, it's unbelievable a lot of the time. There's a very famous scene of these two girls in the Plaza Hotel who've snuck in and are trying to get to the Beatles. And he has such confidence as a cameraman, and you just know he knows. There's a point where this young woman turns around. She's lying through her teeth to the security guard who's throwing her out. And it's as if Al knew that she was going to turn around at that moment. And there's other examples of that too. He has a tracking shot on the way to the Ed Sullivan Theater on, I think it's Broadway. And it just goes on and on and on, and how he's able to capture that. And keep in mind, this is their second film. I mean, Al Maysles had shot for a lot of different filmmakers beforehand, but this is the second time they were shooting together, David and Albert. So it's extraordinary.
Albert had told me this story once about how they got the call to do this, and I wonder if you can tell that story.
Well, I don't really know the story. Rebecca Maysles told us a little bit of it, but
I mean, my understanding was that it was very spur of the moment, like that the plane was about to land at JFK, and they got this call and they didn't know who the Beatles were.
It was close to that. Like the call maybe came the day before. Granada Television, which is an English broadcaster, just wanted someone documenting the Beatles in New York so they could put it on their newscasts. And they called a few documentary filmmakers in New York. Nobody was available. There's an English filmmaker that was on the plane with the Beatles who knew David and Albert from their film. And he recommended them, but I can't remember his name. He taught at Harvard.
Peter Whitehead? No.
No. And
but it did happen for the moment. It wasn't like this was a project they had sought out or developed.
And David knew who they were. Albert got the call, and Albert said, covered, Dave, do you know who the heck the Beatles are? So yeah, they're good.
I was thinking about my relationship to this history, and I take for granted the story of the Beatles coming to America. But then I think about my teenage son, and this history in relation to me, for my teenage son, that's like his relationship to history is like my relationship to World War One. And I wonder if you have gotten a sense of how a younger generation, responds to watching this film.
Well, they're so young. I mean, George Harrison was 20 years old, and I think Ringo was 23. And they're very authentic in the moment, and young people respond to it. They're not. There's nothing manufactured about them. And then the music itself, not everybody loves the music, but a lot of people do. And it's as appealing now as it was 60 years ago. So, and then, I was in Argentina in January, and so many people came up to me and said, "Oh, wow, that Beatles 64 was really, special." Young people. And I think they have a universal appeal.
Well, you can see the film on Disney Plus. It's if you just need a jolt of pleasure in your life, this reliably delivers it. So, David Tedeschi, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate having you.